Hey everyone, Seth at Hub City Vintage. Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at polishing mineral crystals and why it might be the best and perhaps only option in some cases. Now, as most of my work revolves around vintage Seikos, sometimes some other things, you can pretty much correctly assume that most of the crystals that I encounter are acrylic. And acrylic crystals are pretty easy to replace. I've got a few boxes of new old stock crystals, but there are a couple of modern manufacturers, Stern Cruise or GS, that still manufacture replacement crystals for vintage Seikos and many other brands. If you need an acrylic crystal, and a lot of times they'll do mineral ones as well, they're pretty easy to get a hold of. There's usually a GS counterpart style number that's matched against a Seiko stock number, and you just order the crystal that you need. Also, with acrylic, you have that added benefit of if you scratch it in a desk diving accident or something, the like. It's pretty easy with a compound like Polywatch, which is available many places, Amazon, eBay. You can get it pretty much anywhere. You can apply some Polywatch compound to the surface of the crystal, and I always recommend having a couple of microfiber cloths, one for application, that you would actually use to rub in the compound with some pressure, and a little elbow grease. Takes a little practice to kind of get good at, but you can do it very quickly. But you want to apply the polishing compound and then have a separate cloth for buffing and just sort of rejuvenating that nice, clean, polished finish. As you can see in the reflection here, you can get it almost like a glossy wax finish over the top of the crystal. But acrylic crystals that's the easy stuff. And mineral crystals, again, if I can order a replacement, obviously that would be preferential. But with Seiko, and I'm sure some other brands do this as well, a lot of times that's not possible because the bezel and crystal and even the inner reflective chapter there, they're one piece. It's not really one piece. It's more like three pieces that are assembled together to create one piece. But once this has been, assembled, it doesn't come apart. And taking this crystal out is just not an option. Now, this is for a particular model, one that will be coming up soon in an upcoming drop, a 6139 7039, and it's a beautiful chronograph. I love the bezel and crystal housing for this particular watch. It looks very utilitarian, has a bit of a military aesthetic, and a lot of times these original crystal assemblies can be salvaged with a little work. Now I'll get closer up on this one, and you can see this is about as bad as I would like things to be if I'm going to attempt to polish a mineral crystal. And there are a couple of things that I look for. Along the corner, this crystal is beveled, and along that corner, as long as there are no large chips or chunks missing or any cracks that break through the surface of the watch, maybe a crack that is visible on the top as well as the bottom. Anything that would affect the structural integrity of the crystal, you don't want to attempt to repair something like that. Those cracks are likely only to get worse, and you'll end up having done a lot of work for no real result. So you can see here that there are, let's get some reflection on there and take a look. You can see that there are several scratches along the surface of this crystal, but nothing too deep. Some scuffing, but it's certainly worth salvaging, and replacing this crystal can be, I've seen them listed for upwards of $150 to sometimes $200. And if that's the only option that you have for a 6139 7030, especially one in very nice shape, that's not an awful investment to make in the appearance of your watch. But as I said, if we can make this one look pretty close to new, that's what we'd like to do. Now, the way we go about that is we want to remove the scratches first, and then we'll start to create a new finish over the top of the watch that ends with a polishing compound like Polywatch, but a little bit of a tougher material. I'll tell you about that in a minute. As I said, this crystal has a nice beveled edge along the corner here, and we want to try to preserve that as much as possible. I don't like to do anything that affects the original appearance of the watch. I don't like polished cases or refinished cases, and it's the same for me with crystals. I'm going to leave every small nick and ding on this bezel, which there aren't very many, but I don't want to do anything but try to resurface the top of the crystal here and leave everything else as it is, so this watch still maintains its original appearance and honest love and wear of many decades. I think that's just the way it should be. So let's talk about how we start to remove these scratches. And I use 4 different grades of, it's basically sandpaper. I have these discs. We start with about a 320 grain or grit paper to basically remove that top layer of glass and remove as many scratches and nicks as possible. And once you'll be able to see, it's going to create a hazy surface across the top of the crystal, and actually that makes these scratches stand out even more. And I'll just continue to sand until I see that all of those scratches are gone. And of course, once we are done with that 320, you've removed all the scratches that you're going to, then we'll start to recreate the glossy mirror surface of that glass and bring it back to as close to perfect as possible. And we start that with a 1000 grit paper. It almost doesn't even feel like sandpaper. It almost has a sort of a velvety texture, but that's going to start to remove the haziness and many scratches created by using the 320 grit. And when we're done with 1000, we move on to a 3000 grit, which is even softer. Now at this point, you can't make any repairs with a 3000 grit. You're literally just recreating the surface of that crystal, the finish of it. And of course, we'll finish up with a 7000, which barely feels like anything. It almost just feels like a soft paper. But again, each level of grit is going to soften that surface even more, and it's going to polish into a highly reflective finish. And once we're done with our paper all together, we'll mix some paste. We're using a compound called Cerium Oxide, a rare earth metal that has lots of industrial applications, from anything from abrasives to semiconductors, but it's very common and easy to get a hold of. You can find it many places, and this 20 grams of cerium oxide will last me years. I'll never go through it all. I can't imagine. But we'll just put a few drops of water with an amount of this polishing compound, and then we'll work it into the crystal surface to create a nice waxy, glossy mirror finish. Of course, it helps to have a flex shaft, and this is a tool that basically it's a rotor tool, but you can I use a Dremel, but Dremel, obviously they make attachments, and a jeweler's flex shaft you can guess when you can order from them if you want something much nicer. But I've had great luck with the Dremel, and I can move it around as I need to do different things. But this flex shaft allows me to have tighter control of whatever I'm working on, and these different discs, with this particular kit that I ordered, you can they Velcro in place and allow you to work as needed to remove the scratches of that crystal. So that's pretty much what we're going to do, and I will try to. I will tell you, it's not the most fun thing I can do, but the result is very rewarding. I don't think there's much you can do to improve the appearance of a watch quite like replacing the crystal, or in this case, polishing one. It really is going to give you the best look at the dial and do the most to make it look like a new or unworn watch. So I'm going to get started here. We're going to start with this 320 grit, and we'll take a look at the results as we move through it, and we'll talk about that a little bit and see how it comes out. Before we start in earnest, I think it's important to mention that it may seem counterintuitive, but you want to actually keep the RPMs low, and because you want to keep the heat low. Getting this glass really hot, especially against this metal, you can easily cause it to crack or break. So you want to keep your RPMs low and keep the pressure low, and let the paper do the work, and allow your hand to not push against the paper too much. Just let it do its thing, and slowly work your way through the entire crystal until you can tell that all of the scratches that need to be removed have been, and then we'll move on to the next paper from there. I've just finished with the 320 grit paper, and you can see, as I mentioned before, it does leave this sort of a milky, smoky haze across the top of the crystal. Now, in an effort to keep a uniform, very flat finish with no waves or ripples, a couple of spots here, 1, 2, let's see if we can get closer. Yeah, 1, 2, and 3. Those little nicks just go a little bit deeper than I'm comfortable removing, and so we're just going to leave them there. Now, they're much more visible at this point because there is just dust settled into those cracks, but as we continue to sand with the 1003 and 7, they'll become much less evident, and we'll get to a nice clean polished finish across the top. But we've got a nice surface from which to work now, and the bevel is still intact, and so we're going to move on to the 1000 grit, and then we'll take a look at how things look after that, and just keep moving right along. Finishing up with the 1000, you can really start to see the difference in the finish there. There's a much more of a reflective property that wasn't visible before, and you start to notice it as you begin to see the reflection of your tool as you're polishing. But we've got a pretty even finish here, and so we're going to move on to 3000 and start making sure that we get everything as perfect as it can be before we start wrapping up those finishing touches. With 3000 finished up now, you can really see the difference. You can actually see the reflection of the light there across the surface, and things are really starting to come together. We have one more grit to go, the 7000, and that's gonna really just refine all of those tiny little scuffs and get the rest of it looking even more uniform than it does already. And of course, the cerium oxide will be the perfect finishing touch, but I'm pretty happy with how this one's coming out so far, and I think it's going to make a big difference for this watch. And with the 7000 finished, you can really see what a great difference from where we started to how things look now. Really just a beautiful finish already. And this is just through the sanding process. So from here we'll move on to the cerium oxide, which I know it doesn't seem like it could make much of a difference, but it really will just smooth out all of the edges. Any little scuffs that are left, it really just does such a great job. So we're going to move on to that. And as I said before, how I'll do that is I'll apply some water to some of this cerium oxide paste. You can see I just continually use this container over and over again. This is a bit of a messier process, so I'm not going to do this right here on my bench, but just to give you an idea of how it's going to work, just as the sandpaper clips on, I've got Velcro back on the back of this polishing pad as well. And as we're working with a wet material, I'd rather not do this right at my bench, but we'll put some cerium oxide powder in there, add some water till we get a bit of a slurry mixture, something as thick as you can, as thick as you want to work with, and then we'll finish out the polishing. But it's going to work much like polywatch would, whereas we normally do polywatch with our hand by hand. This is going to just incorporate the use of the flex shaft here, but I will be sure to come back and show you exactly how things finished up after the cerium oxide polish. And then of course down the road you'll get to see how it looks complete with the watch and everything. But I'll be back in just a moment with the cerium oxide finished, and we'll take a look at how things wrap up. So finishing up with the cerium oxide polishing, things went very smoothly, and you can really see, I thought I would just partially put this one together, just so you could see a contrast of the finish of the crystal with the dial underneath, and what a difference it makes to have a nice clean crystal, to really just showcase such a great dial. This is just a great watch anyway, well worth the extra effort of making the crystal look as nice as it can, and again, the added benefit of keeping this one completely original. But I hope that you enjoyed the process, and it's certainly, as I said before, a labor of love. It's something that you really have to want to do, especially if you're going to really just take the time to do the best job that can be done to make it as clean and as even as it can be, and still manage to preserve that nice bezel on the edge of the crystal. But well worth the effort in my opinion, and there are products out there that you can pick up quite easily to help you get there if it's something that you think you want to do. But thank you for watching. We hope if you like that, you'll consider subscribing. You can also check us out at Patreon. $7 a month gets you early look at all of our upcoming inventory. We do some exclusive content there, as well as giveaways, and we've got some things coming up in the very near future that I think you'll certainly want to be a part of. So maybe you'll consider that as well. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.